Welcome back to another episode of The Dive. We're ringing in the new one with the cowbell. I know you're gonna love that one, Luca.
Oh God.
You got to bring the Bulldogs and the cowbell with you everywhere you go. So how are you on this fine Sunday morning?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Just enjoying the day. Nice little morning. So, about yourself?
Oh, can't complain. Woke up on the right side of the bed this morning and getting ready to roll onto this. So another day, another dollar.
There you go. There you go. It's been freezing cold here, so I'm not sure about in the Midwest, but
Yeah, we just had that ice storm, or snow and ice, and I mean it's been barely over the teens for the past week and a half, and it's been nothing but frigid, man.
welcome to the club.
I mean, you guys deserve it. You're up north. I'm in the
Welcome
middle
to
of
the
I'm in
Northeast.
the That's what I'm saying. You live there for a reason.
Though, I didn't realize how cold it got out there because when I was with the twins in the Cedar Rapids, um, my host family, they were like, "Oh yeah, like it gets to like -20, -30," and I was like, "Excuse me?" They're like, "Yeah, it gets cold over here."
Yeah, it
I was
does
like,
get cold.
what? I realized it was cold, but then I thought about it. I was like, yeah, that makes sense. But I mean, dude, -20, -30. Like, what? Where do you live? But I don't know. Beth, I mean, I
I
want
mean,
to see that. I've never seen that in my life. Northeast, they
uh,
say it's really cold. It's like -5 max.
I mean, a
I've never
lot of
seen
it's like
-10,
a lot of
-15.
it's wind chill, I think. Like,
Well,
I don't
yeah,
know,
yeah,
we
for
don't
sure.
like we might like this week like the 0 to teens, I feel like has been not normal. Like I don't remember a whole lot of 0 degrees stuff, but the wind chill around here just makes it like we're kind of flat, so it just kind of runs through everywhere. Like kind of flat, but not a
Yeah,
lot
some
of bit,
mornings
not
you
a lot
walk
of
in a
not a lot
hotel.
of big buildings and stuff to block the wind, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, because I live like in a little, like I live like a little mini city here in Hoboken. Like when I walk to my car, I park like 10 minutes away. I mean, some days I like just want to turn around and start walking backwards and just like put my head down because the wind is just blowing my face, dude, and get dry skin everywhere. My hands, if I like move them like this, like if I close them into a fist too fast, they crack. My girlfriend's making fun of me, calling me crusty dusty. It's so bad.
That's who you are.
Yeah, crusty dusty. That's me.
All right, so you ready to dive into this one?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, so today we're going to dive into Jordan Peterson's book. It's called We Who Wrestle with God. And over the course of the last couple of weeks, we've been reading it together more or less separately, but we kind of hung up on chapter four a lot. And I think chapter four, it's about Noah and the story of Noah, but it really impacted both of us, or the way he wrote about it impacted both of us highly. And we're going to talk about it and talk about what affected us and that stuff. But first, we'll give you a little background on if you don't know who Peterson is. Peterson is a Canadian philosopher. He's kind of a well-known, does a lot of talks, does a lot of speaking. He has a couple books out there. 12 Rules of Life we read, and then what was the second one? Is it 12 More
Beyond
Rules of
order.
Life? Beyond Order?
Yeah,
Beyond
well, I
Order?
mean, it is 12 rules for 12 more rules, but I think it's more so known as Beyond Order.
Okay, so Beyond Order, and then I think he has a couple other ones out that are a little lesser known, but then he has this newest one, We Who Wrestle with God. And I think a lot of our conversations have stemmed from that, like in the past, like
Absolutely.
pre podcast. So just bringing that conversation here and letting you guys in on exactly that, you know. So almost like a book club type meeting, but just discussing our lens through his writing, in a sense.
Yeah.
So I'll kind of just turn it over to you if you have anything else to add.
Yeah, no, Jordan Peterson also, he's a psychologist as well. He's a clinical psychologist. Uh, Not only he started off really as a professor as well. Well, no, I'm sorry. He started off as a psychologist. He also is a professor. He's taught at Harvard, taught at University of Toronto, all these things. So he has a lot of background in terms of all this. So he's been doing this for a while, and it's not really until like 2015, 2016 he actually went on to like the world stage really with all these stuff he was teaching. Um, but he had this weird idea, I guess you can call it, back in the day, where he went on YouTube and he started posting his lectures. I guess that wasn't a thing that professors really did back in the day, and or back in the day, shit, 2012, aging us. But like, I guess professors weren't doing that, And he was teaching, like you said, he was teaching at Harvard and University of Toronto. I'm not sure in terms of the status of that university out in Canada, but these are, well-known like institutions, and he's just posting these publicly to like for free. And he got a lot of good feedback, and he got a lot of attention. A lot of people were saying like they're affecting him positively. So he kind of just realized that this, what he's teaching, he can really spread out more so than just the classroom. And I'm grateful he did, because he's changed my life. I know he's impacted yours heavily, and a lot of people that I know. And he's been, I mean, instrumental to God knows how many people. So I appreciate his
And you
his
even went to one
existence.
of his, yeah, you went to one of his talks, and I haven't done that yet, but
Yeah.
take us through that experience real quick.
Yeah, no, I went and saw him live last year in Radio City Music Hall. It was great. It was amazing. He spoke on, he basically, what he does is a lot of times when someone speaks live, they kind of have like a script, like you want to speak in front of thousands of people, like you have like a thing you're going to discuss. But what he does is really cool, is that he thinks aloud. Now granted, he knows the topic he's going to cover and how he's going to venture into it, but he makes a point to note whenever he's talking to people that, like, each show is not the same. Like you go to see a comedian, for example, right? Comedian has all these different stops throughout the country. Well, they're staying the same skit, because that's why they don't want you to videotape it. Because if you see it if you see it in April on a videotape on YouTube, or whatever, it's gonna be the same thing in September. But Jordan Peterson's not like that. He kind of picks his topic, what he's going to talk about, and usually it's a biblical story. In my case, he talked about Cain and Abel a good bit. He went into a little bit of Moses, I believe, but it's cool. I think he was kind of starting up how he kind of started off the book, like in terms of the chapters, because that's how he opened up. Granted, obviously, Cain and Abel's the first story, I guess, of the Bible in terms of like two first humans, but I mean, or I guess not first humans, what I mean, the
Sons.
first two humans, yeah, that were
Yeah.
born like of us, but um, but yeah, he kind of structured it that way, and he just thinks aloud for like an hour and a half. He just talks, and it makes me feel less crazy, because he's like someone that could talk way more than me, and and he just talks, dude, and like it's incredible, because it's just silence, and just people are just captivated by him. He just thinks aloud, and the concept that he states over and over again, like, when you listen to him, just all these different podcasts and stuff, is like, you don't need to be in, part of the conversation to be, or you don't need to be speaking in the conversation actively to be part of the conversation. And it's true that he's literally in a conversation with 5,000-6,000 people, and he's just talking to himself, because everyone is just so bought into what he's saying and just listening. And I'm not sure if every single person there is, a true believer, let's say, of what he's preaching and what he's saying, and are they actively, living these things out on a daily basis. But you can count on him provoking thought. And so that's really why I wanted to go and see him. I took Tally and I back in April, and it was a great decision. It was amazing. I'm grateful we did.
What do you think leads to his like depth? Like, do you think he just sits around and thinks, or do you think like what constitutes his level of thinking?
Truth.
Truth
I
and like
think.
seeking truth?
No, I think because, so one of the things he likes to say is that, hell's a bottomless pit. It's like you can never go too far down. When you think you're at the bottom, like, there's always worse. But like, not like the same applies upwards, because obviously there's a pinnacle that you can grasp, and that being God. But to a human being, like, we're so far below that I feel like there's always something when you're seeking truth. Like, there's always going to be something that you can try and take you to the next level. It's like those doors are always going to be open. It's just a matter of if you're going to sit there and, I'm sorry, they're not always going to be open. They're always going to present themselves as opportunities to be opened. And, the prerequisite to that is just like thinking about it. And I feel like he just does that better than anyone I've ever listened to. It's just like, he just seeks the truth, and, in the smallest of things, and, a small story, he just really boils it down. That's why this book is pretty dense, because the concepts he's talking about, like, are they simple? It's like, no. But are they super complicated? No. But there's so much meaning in just the smallest things, like, if you really sit there and think about, like, if you just think about what the significance of what it is, right? It's just like the smallest thing. There's so many things that can open up that just by provoking, like it just provokes thought into what actually is behind it. And he just does that, like I said, better than anybody. And that's why he can sit there and talk for 2 hours, an hour and a half on, one biblical passage. And I mean, Bible's I feel like that's an easy example, just because there's so many hidden meanings. People have been studying for however many thousands of years and still haven't gotten to the bottom of it. So
Well, what I kind of find interesting about him is early on, like he claims to be atheist or a non-believer, and like his progression through that as a psychologist, as a philosopher is really interesting, because like the last book that he wrote is titled We Who Wrestle with God, and
hmm
it's interesting to like see that transformation, or like in that deep thought like sense where he's like expanding on everything that he says, and like he's a big believer, or he says that he doesn't like to go back against his word, and it's pretty like wild to me that like a lot of the things like he said early on don't disalign with what he's saying now. Like they're still like in that same like corpus of like he's still like he maybe he thought he wasn't a believer early on, but he has always been a believer, and then he's kind of just like accepting it and walking into it a little deeper, and I thought that was like an interesting
yeah.
part of it. You know what
Well,
I'm saying? I don't know if that makes
that's the whole
sense,
part.
but
No, that's kind of the principle of the book, because what he's arguing is his whole. When people asked him about the book, when he was talking about it on podcasts, this and that, just in interviews, and he mentioned the book, there were a lot of people asked him, like, well, what's your purpose for writing the book? Like, what are you trying to get across? People write stories to tell their lives. People tell stories just to tell a story. His point, he said multiple times, he said, I believe that I can rid the belief of atheism. He goes, I think that I can truly do atheism away, because of everything he states in the book. But essentially, it's just like, if you're seeking truth, you're seeking something bigger than yourself, and like you can't.
okay,
You
I
can
got
be
I got
atheist, yeah. You can be an atheist, sure, but like if you're seeking truth, the way he goes into and everything, truth comes from the highest being. Like when you seek truth consistently, you're putting yourself in alignment with God. That's what he claims. And, if that's the case, then how are you atheist if that's the case? Even though you don't believe it. That's why I think maybe what he was saying back in the day, it's like he didn't believe he was a believer, but then he says that he says that he's not a believer in God, but he acts as though God exists. And that, if
that
you
was
really
early on.
even now, those are
Oh,
I mean, these are interviews from like, yeah, I guess the interview I was listening to the other day, for example, was like 2018. But I mean, I've heard the interview a good bit, but it's like he says that even now. It's like he acts as though God exists. And what does that mean? It's like, well, if he does exist, how would he want me to act? And that's faith. And that's what the book's about.
I'm gonna dive. There's a highlight I have in this chapter. I'm gonna read it, and I think it goes right along with what we're saying. And these are his words, Peterson. So to start the quote, he says, "To
What page
believe
is this on?
is I don't know.
Okay.
I'm on Kindle, so I don't know
Oh,
what
okay. Yeah.
word.
Sorry.
To believe is much more truly and usefully to commit to sacrifice everything to be voluntarily possessed by. True belief is therefore the ultimate relationship, not the mere description of some state of affairs." So like it goes along with what you're saying as far as I'm gonna act as if God exists, and
Yeah.
and like I think then he goes a step farther in describing what belief is, and it's like, what is belief? It's like that he goes sacrifice everything to, and it's you hear that in the Bible of like in the New Testament they talk about pick up your cross and carry it
hmm
and carry it with me. Like Jesus says to like a rich guy, he goes, give up all your possessions, pick up your cross and walk with me. And like the guy mumbles and grumbles and like it just shows that like he wasn't like a true believer in a sense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like if he was a true believer, he would have given up everything, and Jesus would have like multiplied his riches in a sense. So like I really like that definition of just like to is much more truly and usefully to commit to and to sacrifice everything to and to be voluntarily possessed by. So it's like
Absolutely.
you're allowing like God to possess you instead of allowing the demon and the devil to possess you. And so I thought that was like that that part of like I got much more, but it was just that hit me the hardest in this chapter.
Yeah, well, that I agree with everything you're saying, and I not like I'm fundamentally I have a fundamental problem with the church. Obviously, it's not the problem with like I I just can't get behind the population of people that claim they go to church and that's their faith. You know, like it's not about going to church. It's not even about saying you believe in God. You know, if anything, that was the whole problem with the Pharisees. You know, they basically were the people that were claiming, you know, their faith out loud and doing all these things, but then at the same time they were doing everything but, you know, internally. So my problem with the church, with the people that go to church like this, is that they go to church and they think that's it. They think that's their belief, you know. But then they leave church, they go for that 1 hour in the week, and they're acting the same they did before. You know, in theory, like that church is almost that church session, that church mass is like that's an opportunity to learn something for the next week, and you apply that for the week. And if you apply those things, and don't forget about the previous week, and don't forget about 2 weeks previous, and then so on backwards. It's like if you just add these weeks on, well, then 3 years down the line, like you should have gotten somewhere, you know. And I feel like a lot of these people that go to church that claim this is like that's their faith, and they act the same way in terms of, you know, acting on impulse and acting on hedonism and doing these things against that they know are wrong, and that actually internally they feel bad about. But it's just like they become so numb to it, just like, well, you know, who cares at this point? Well, it's like, well, that's the problem. So if you're not actively acting as though you're trying to make God proud, you know, essentially that's kind of what it boils down to. It's like if you don't even think God's proud of you, how are you gonna be proud of yourself? And the only way you can actually truly get to come to a better place of that is just by proving to yourself that what you're doing is right. You know, and you do that over and over again, and through time, it's like things are going to start working out better. But this is a long-winded way of saying just like it's one thing just to show up, but it's another thing to act on it. You know, and so I think a lot of the things that Jordan Peterson talks about with regard to like acting as though God exists, it's based off that.
A little bit in that 12 rules of life that we like I took away from it. It was during my self accountability journal was make sure your house is taken care of before you criticize anybody else's house,
Yeah,
or like make sure everything you're doing is in accordance to like the truth or the proper way or aiming high or however you want to view it before you go out and be like, oh, you're doing it wrong or you doing it wrong. And that's a chord that I'm still like, you know, trying to live by because regardless of my situation, regardless of how good or bad I have it, like I could always do something better, whether it's keeping my mouth shut longer, whether it's,
absolutely.
you know, like sticking to my routine or having more discipline. There's always something that I could do better, like personally, what like each step of the way. Like I don't
Absolutely.
think they're like so it's hard. I think when you think about it that way, it takes away like a lot of oh like I want to blame somebody else or like it takes all the accountability onto you and then like when God's within you, then you can have that conversation with God and how to disperse and get better from there. Whether that be, you know, meditating, whether that be journaling, whether that be a long walk in the park, like however each individual person does that, you know, has those conversations with God, and then you can walk with him instead of walking against him.
Yeah, no, 100%. That reminds me of a conversation that Jordan Peterson had with Chris Williamson on Modern Wisdom, and he's fundamentally just saying that because the question that Chris asked him was just like, you know, I used to be an athlete. Yeah, I used to have this, you know, this competitiveness to exert this out on someone else, and now I lack that. And now that I'm not competing on a daily basis or weekly or yearly basis, like I have a hard time channeling that. And it's just like not being able to cast that on someone else. Like, it's hard. And then Jordan's answer was really just like, well, if you want to wrestle with someone, like, start from within. Fundamentally, the battle should be within rather than external. It's like if you don't do that, well, then you're going to constantly find things outside of yourself to battle with, to wrestle with. But at the same time, it's like that's not going to be beneficial for you, or it's not going to be beneficial for the person that you're casting this out on. Just because we're, as human beings, we're problem, like, we fundamentally want to fix problems. Like, I guess essentially, like, if you think of when you're at your worst, or not, I can speak for myself. It's like I constantly need something to work for, like to solve, like little things. Like, you always find a problem if you want to find one. So like,
Oh, can you?
yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, I don't know.
Interesting.
You'll always find one. So like, if you constantly try to just dig within yourself, that's kind of what he's saying. It's like you'll always have something to wrestle with inside, whether it be nihilism, whether it be depression, whether it be anxiety, whether it be pride, whether it be grief or this and that. It could be anything. Just like you got to actually take the time to look within. And
So then, like,
time.
what does that simple process kind of look like as far as like for you personally is diving within and cleaning up your own house and so to speak.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so he actually goes into this in the book, um, in the story of Noah. Basically, it's chapter 4.2, I believe, maybe 4.3. But my main most of my underlines come from 4.3. I have some 4.2s, but 4.3 is really the sub chapter that really struck with me. I think that is one of the most beneficial chapters I've ever read in my life.
All right, let's hear it.
And so the story of Noah and stuff, basically what he's talking about is, Noah had this inclination. He felt like he needed to act, and he couldn't really put a finger to it. But obviously in the Bible, it's like his faith in God. God spoke to him and told him he needed to create, he needed to build the ark. He needed to do all this stuff. Like, the Bible is that God is the person that spoke to him. But it's like the way he talks about it in the book, Jordan Peterson breaks it down, is like he basically says right here. It says, God is for Noah by definition what guides him, what seizes him as he makes his way forward, no matter what he decides to do. All his choices must therefore be properly constructed as decisions and acts of faith, because he does not and cannot truly know what is coming. So, what he's saying here is that basically God is what seizes Noah's attention, what calls him to act. That intuition. Okay. Well, a little lower, he goes, Noah's belief in God is therefore not the formulaic recitation of an explicit proclamation of belief. So basically saying, Noah's belief in God isn't that he's going out talking to everyone saying, I believe in God, this God spoke to me. It's his willingness to act when called on by the deepest inclinations of his soul. So then, okay. Well, now he goes into the next part. The story of Noah, like all ancient stories we will consider, is thus an argument for the existence of God, rendering against the doubt of believer and unbeliever alike, but a description of what is to be held properly in the very highest of places, so that the continuation of man's society and world may be ensured. A wise man is someone who has consistently paid attention, informed himself and others as a consequence, told himself and others the truth insofar as he was capable, and acted in accordance with that truth. And then he keeps going down, and he goes, his capacity to receive a beneficial and accurate revelation was thereby honed, practiced, and developed, and perfected, as was his ability to differentiate between a true or deep revelation, let us say, and the mere temptation of momentary hedonistic whim. Keep going down a little bit. This all makes sense. I'm just reading now. Noah has refused to tell himself the lies that tempt with the pleasures of short-term gratification and avoidance of ultimate responsibility. Thus, he can see what is right in front of his eyes, and can and will note before anyone else, the gathering of clouds. This means that he has the same relationship to himself and to the cosmic order as someone might have with another person they admire greatly and whose advice they would rely on in times of trouble. So, the point of me saying all that is, I was thinking about that this morning actually, when I was just going over some things, just like looking into it, whatever. Because I haven't read that chapter really since I read it a few weeks ago. What I decided to do was look at it backwards. I looked at it from the part of being someone you admire to listening to when God calls you. Okay? And for the sake of conversation, look at it through the sake of when God calls you, look at it through, it's more so the voice inside telling you to act. The voice inside that's just constantly speaking to you. It's like, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. Okay. Well, when I broke it down that way, I looked at it like, okay, how am I going to be someone that I can admire? Or in turn, how am I going to be someone that I love? How can I be someone that I trust? Right? That's the first step. That's pulling yourself out of chaos. And in my mind, the thing that came to mind was the prisoner's phase. I'm not a psychologist, and I'm not going to sit here and go into depth about all the little intricacies. But essentially, the prisoner's phase is the stage in your life. Typically, for people, it's like in the adolescent years, early adult life. It could be God knows how long. It could be your entire life if you don't ever address things properly. But it's essentially the part in your life where you have to prove to yourself that you're capable of being free. And, growing up, let's say, you're at a park playing with your friends, right? If you mess up, if you do something wrong, like, you have your parents there. They're watching you, because that's what parents do. They don't just leave you at the park as an 8-year-old and just let you be. Mm-hmm. Most of the time, they're there watching you. Okay, well, if you mess up, you do something, you hit a kid, you throw a rock at a girl, for example. They come at you, or a guy, too, it doesn't matter. You throw a rock at anyone, throw a rock at a dog. Like, they come to you and say, that's not good. Time out, we're going home, this and that, whatever it is. But you have someone telling you you don't do something right. You're not doing something right.
There's a consequence. There's a consequence, yeah.
Exactly. Well, as you get older, you don't have that always. That has to be from within. So the prisoner's phase is really that stage in your life where it's a stage in your life. I can speak for myself. It's like where you're proving to yourself that you are who you say you are, who you believe you are, and that comes from being hard on yourself. It comes from like borderline being a tyrant to yourself. It comes from punishing yourself if need be to a certain extent. Not sitting here saying punishing but to a certain extent, it's mostly just proving to yourself who's in control. And if you do that long enough and you start to grow this understanding of, okay, this is what I do, this is who I am, this is what I do when I am who I am, this is what I do when I'm not who I am, well, you start to be able to decipher like the person you are versus who you don't want to be. And then you do it long enough, well, then you start to realize that this road, this journey is the person that I am. Okay. So then let's say you do that long enough. That could be 3 podcasts in and of itself. You do that long enough, okay? And like you start to become, comfortable with who you are. You look yourself in the mirror. You're proud of what you see. You've put your room in order. You've got everything in your life, let's say, behind you that you're comfortable with. You're proud of things. You've fallen in love with yourself. It's a long journey, but you get to that point. Okay, you fall in love with yourself. Okay, and it's like, well, how do you train yourself to trust your intuition? It's like just that. It's like you've done the things behind the scenes. Past time or in the history to like allow yourself to trust what you think needs to be done going forward.
Okay, so let's say you don't have that preparation or you're just starting out. You know what I'm saying? It's like, how do you, if you're the student and you know nothing, you're ignorant, how do you get to that point where you can trust your intuition? I want your answer. I want your answer first.
So, my my answer is you have to prove it to yourself.
How? You don't know anything. How do you prove something to yourself when you don't know anything?
Well, that's the beginning. That's just you start somewhere. It's like what scares you,
Okay.
you know, and like address it. You know, like
You're saying so like
you
whatever
can't.
scares you, try to figure that out and start there.
Yeah, it's like it's small, but like I said, I'm not gonna sit here and claim that I'm some all knowing. Like I don't. I listen to Jordan Peterson and like
Religiously.
he's changed my life and like, but I'm not gonna sit here and preach as though on him. I can
Yeah,
only I can speak on what he's taught me, but and in terms of what I've taught myself and
learn.
things I've learned on my own.
Yeah.
But like, if you don't know anything and you're just lost, it's like the best thing you can do is just start somewhere. That's why growth is like to me. I said way back when it's like an arbitrary term, like because everyone starts somewhere different. Everyone starts at a different place, but it doesn't matter where you start. It matters what you're seeking. So like, what scares you? I don't know, like a lot
Okay.
of things. Things still scare you. Things still scare me though.
How about being alone? Let's start there.
Okay, well, I have this quote in my room. It states, "All of humanity's problem stems from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone." So that quote in and of itself, kind of talks about what we're talking about. It's like, what problems are going on in the world? A lot of problems. And one of Jordan Peterson's main points that he likes to talk about is don't criticize the world, or better yet, put your room in order before you criticize the world. And it's like you have a lot of people that don't have anything in order. Because the way he talks about it, it's like it's hierarchy of accomplishments, right? Like put your room in order. Okay. Put your life in order. Or put your room in order, put your relationship with yourself in order. Okay, well then if you do that, if you have your relationship with yourself in order, well maybe you have an opportunity to put a relationship with someone else in order. Let's say an intimate relationship, right? Okay, you put that relationship together. And now that's flourishing. That's let's say that leads to marriage. Okay, well now you have an opportunity to put a family in order. Now you put your family in order. You have a good situation at home. You and your wife have a good relationship. You and your kids have a good relationship. You have a good relationship with yourself. Okay, these are all things moving up, trending upwards. Okay, well now you do this. Now you have an opportunity to. Granted, it's probably not all happening one by one by one. You're probably doing your things at work and your professional life as well as other things. But then you have an opportunity to put things at work in order and your professional life and stuff like that. And then you keep going up and you can put your community in order and you see where I'm going. It's like then the world is the last, but you have a lot of people. I can speak for America only. You have a lot of people that are trying to put America in order, try to solve fundamental problems in America that I don't know them as people, but I'd argue don't even have their own life in order. And just like when you skip steps, there's a lot of gray area that
So
is
when you get
scary.
okay, here's my next question is like you talk about these layers. Like let's say you get your like how do you know when it's in order? Is it just like aligned? Is it comfortable? Is it like you're succeeding in that? Is and that's how you know that it's going in the manner that you want? Like
I'd say
you're in order?
when you're in a good place, you feel it. And that's part of just trusting your intuition. It's like if you don't feel right, probably because something isn't right. And that's part of where I was getting at with, the trending backwards. It's like it doesn't have to be a calling to save the world. You know? Like the story of Noah is like, yeah, he saved humanity. That's the whole moral of the story. Created the ark, God wiped out all the people that were sinning, that were going against him, this and that, and he basically wanted a fresh start. So he
I mean,
told Noah to
I
create
would
the ark, and
argue that he just saved himself and his family.
well, God told him
Well,
to get
exactly.
one of each animal, like a male and a female, so that they could replicate afterwards. He told him to get one of each, like so it wasn't just his family. But in a sense, that's the point. It's like the people who were close to Noah were people he was able to, I guess, he was able to influence, and in doing so, they were people that were seeking the truth and they were seeking God, and so those people that were saved. Like it's not a matter of because they were his family. I guess you can look at it through as like it's a matter of them coming in contact with Noah himself and being influenced by him. You know, it's like they were worthy of being saved not because of Noah, it's because of their actions, their decisions. Well, maybe they were just like us. Like maybe our actions and our decisions were influenced by Jordan Peterson, but it's on us. You know, so like, um,
Well, I'm not going to argue with you. I would say we were influenced by God, and then we were seeking the truth. And the guy that was relating to us, or that we found, I don't want to say comfort in, that we found knowledge in, or aware of the truth, was him.
yeah, yeah,
You know,
yeah,
like I think we're kind of missing a step there. Is like
yeah.
we're at war with ourselves, and we're trying to find the truth. And it has, like you said, it has to start somewhere. So like somebody has to speak to you, or our ears have to be open somewhere along the line in order for us to listen.
Absolutely,
So
absolutely.
maybe it was Peterson, but I think God opened our ears to Peterson because of the journey he was on, that kind of, you know, spoke to us. And then like I told this to my buddy John, is like I'm reading this book, and it's like it makes me want to go read the Bible for myself, like the way he's describing,
Hmm.
Cain and Abel, the way he's describing Adam and Eve. It's just like, man, like I want to go back, and now I want to open it up and like make my own inferences and make my own, not judgments, but like try to see what he's seen after post reading it, just out of pure curiosity, like to see the intricacies of his brain, the way he thinks.
Yeah.
And then becoming closer with God through, like, in that manner. It's that being possessed by God in the relationship, like building that relationship with God.
Like seeing how you interpret it, like yourself when you read it.
Yeah, and then like I don't know, he dives into such depth, and like I think that's what amazes me, is like I don't want, like you said, it's not a simple story, but he takes these stories and he turns them into like these these life lessons that are pages long, and you're like, and yeah, they're dense, and it's not an easy read by any means, but I'm encapsulated when reading it. Like I'm there. I'm like, man, like I gotta be 100% present in order to intake this. Like
That's for sure.
if I'm the slight bit distracted, then I am not gathering the information that is necessary to read the novel. And like I'll just put it down at that point. Like if I try two or three times and I fail, I'm like, okay, like I need to change something. Like maybe it's not the time of day to do it. Maybe like I need to find peace and quiet, or I need to find calm in order to have the focus.
So then, why do you think? Let's say you need to be in a place where you really like you need to be in the proper headspace to actually read it.
Peterson.
What's calling to you to actually give that context enough respect to do that?
Because I mean, what he's saying is beyond valuable. Like he's diving into the Word of God at a level that I've never experienced before. And I think it's interesting because it's something I would like to know more about. And I think it's something that a lot of people want to know more about. And like I think that coming to the truth, or coming to that realization that like spirituality and God, and all that stuff is real, is difficult for some. And then like once you come to that realization and you're on board or you're off board, and I'm on board. So it's like, okay, God's real now, Jesus Christ is real now. What does that mean?
So then, what
And
would
go ahead.
in your
No,
opinion? No, in your opinion, why would someone be off board? Heck, how? But actually, no, not why. How? How would someone be off board? That's what I fail to understand. It's like when I see shit going on. It's like, how can someone truly believe that that's the right way?
well, I don't think they believe it's the right way. I just think they're experiencing success, or they're experiencing life, and they don't want to change anything. Like they're ignorant. They don't know. Like that was my question earlier. Is like if you don't know, if you're unaware, it's hard to change anything. So like to relate it to me, like my early years, like let's just say until, I mean, even post college, let's just say from zero till college, what is that, 22 years old? Like I grew up in the church. I went to a Catholic high school, but like I wouldn't say that I was a devout Christian. I wouldn't say I would be a practicing Christian. But like in the situations that occurred in those years, I knew right from wrong. I might have chose wrong, like in those moments when I was younger. Might have, and like, so it's just like, was that ignorance? I wasn't ignorant, but I was just actively seeking something against the right path or the narrow path. And consciously, unconsciously, it's just like, man, what, like, I don't know.
No, I hear you. Give me one moment because I'm trying to figure out what you're just saying. He mentioned in this chapter, and I didn't
Yeah,
get to it. Let me think.
there's that unconscious part too that I would like to talk about. So while you're looking for that, I'm gonna go off of this. And this is in 4:3 of the chapter, and this is I'm gonna start to quote from Peterson. It says, "A man aiming at what is highest and concentrating on the truth, instead of focusing on and promoting his own self-centered interests, lacks self-consciousness, because what he is attending to is not about him, at least not as an isolated being trapped in the carnal now. He is doing something other than following the instinctual and immediate dictates of his impulsive and narcissistic self-interest. The latter tactic ensures only the emergence of involuntary self-reflection and painful self-consciousness, as we have seen." Another quote, "I am making the impact I want and need so desperately to make. Am I impressing those whom I am parading myself in front of? Am I winning this argument? Am I emerging as the victor in the contest of status? Am I successful insisting on my publicly displayed moral virtue? The alternative is to walk (parentheses) unself-consciously (in parentheses) with God." And I think that's like, I don't know, it was profound to me about the conscious or like the self-conscious thing, because I think that is like where anxiety, that's where depression, that's where a lot of those things come from, because
Hmm.
you're so centered on who you are. Like, oh, like, woe is me because the situation that I wanted didn't turn out to be. Or your anxiety about the future is like, oh, I have this project due next week and I don't know if I have the ability to get it done. So, like, instead of like making it not about you, and releasing that, and like, and doing the best you can just with the everything that you're given, that would be unset, like you wouldn't be self-conscious. Whereas like if you make it all about yourself and you just dive into the anxiety and you dive into the depression, then you get into that self-conscious like wormhole.
100%. 100%. But that's how you look. Then when you look from within, that's how you really solve problems.
Yeah, exactly. But like, I don't know, you have to get out of your own way, and you can't, like, the moment that you make it about you is the moment that you lose the war or the battle.
So I agree, but at what point do you think? At what point do you think in that? Actually, let me phrase this properly. There's always a step in the journey that's about you. Otherwise, it's that you're never going to make any improvements. In my opinion, it's like you have to look internally at one point, and then at a certain point, you have to be able to get to a point where you're comfortable enough with yourself to where you can look outward and trust that you're still going to be the same person. Does that make sense? So like my
Well,
question is like, how do you how do you ride that line? Because it is about you, but
I think it's maturity, because like from my perspective, my point of view is when I was immature, when I was younger, and I'm not, I mean, I think I have a long way to go, but immaturity, like everything was about me. Everything. Like that was the only thing that I wanted, was anything revolving around me. And I think as you get older, I think you just start taking away things that you want to be about you. So I think it's
would you
like,
say it's the pleasure of things being about you? Is that did it make you? Was it that you made you feel good that it was about you, or is it that you needed that?
I don't, I think when you're like I said, we are ignorant. You're unaware of that it's not about you, because when you were little, like it was about you. Like when you were a baby or you were a toddler, like everything was about you. It's what you wanted to do. It's what and like and maybe that's just my parents, like and the way they raised me, and and then once you mature, you are like once you get past that, you have to realize that it's not like playing team sports or playing this like you want the team to succeed, so you let go of your own self-interest. Your team's going to succeed because now you're going to be the player that the team needs. If you happen to be the superstar and you got to go and fill that role, like that might be what the team needs. You might need to be the six man on the bench, and that was like my struggle in high school. Is like well, in high school basketball, I like in no stretch of the imagination was I a superstar, but I was highly athletic at a very small school. And like I was so wishy-washy on like just the preparation and doing the work. Like I just thought my athletic ability would take over. And so then a lot of things like transpired where like I don't like the way I handled a lot of situations during 2 or 3 seasons in there. Like it just my immaturity wanted to make it about me. And I never got past it. So like if the team won and I didn't play, I was pissed. If I didn't like, it wasn't like I didn't enjoy the team. And I think that's like, if I could go back and change one thing, I would like to just talk to my younger self about that, is just like, hey, like it's just not about you in this moment. Like you will have your chance to shine, like no doubt. Just let other people have their moments that deserve their moments.
Do you think
So
that
like
stemmed from? I mean, obviously you were young, but do you believe that stems from the idea that like you feel like you need that to justify yourself to yourself?
I think it was egotistical. I think it was just self-centeredness, and I was, like I said, everything revolved around me, and I never got out of my own way in order to see another perspective. Like I didn't see any other perspective because I wasn't doing any other work. Like I wasn't working on getting better. I wasn't preparing. I just thought that I was better. Like, and I'm not saying it's a bad attitude to have, but like if you apply, I believe that I am best along with the work ethic that thinks you're the worst. Like if you work like you're the worst, but you think like you're the best, like I think that's kind of like how a superstar develops. Because like if you're working as you're the worst, you're going to be working extremely hard. Whereas if you have the mentality to be like, yo, I know I can do this. Like I'm really good at this. Once you get into competition and performing, then it just like it kind of explodes and it accumulates and like I think that's where you see a lot of like high school phenoms or college phenoms or professional phenoms, even on and off the court in business or in baseball or just in life is that like the combination of those two things I think like is the ideal that I want to live in.
How much of that do you think when you don't achieve that? How much of that do you think stems from your lack of comfort with yourself?
I mean, I think you need that growing pattern. I think like God places those opportunities or those obstacles in your way in order to learn and to grow. So though I failed in basketball, right? When I got to college and they moved me to the bullpen, I didn't throw a pity party. I didn't get sad. I didn't do what I did in college or in high school basketball. So like maybe like that those instances like unknowingly prepared me for what was next. So like yeah, do I wish I didn't do it or I wish I would have learned sooner and quicker? Yes, absolutely. But like I think it's all about like there's a maturation process through the entire journey or through the entire life cycle. So like in order to learn, like it's easier to learn from failure than it is from winning. Like I think, and that's where some people like if you can learn from winning, you're different. You're excellent. But it's harder because people get caught up in the celebration of winning
Right,
or
they need that.
succeeding. Like if you just allow a small amount of time for the celebration of winning, and then the minute that it's over, you remove yourself and you act again like you have a mountain to climb. Like that's kind of what I learned from Saban's book that I just read, I just finished, and it was just like he never, like, he had a 24-hour rule, and at the end of 24 hours, win or lose, it was over, it was done, it was on to the next week. So every Monday they showed up, that next week you couldn't tell if they won or lost because it was all preparation for next week's Saturday. So like
Mhm.
that's something I would like to be better at applying to my life, you know.
Whenever I think of stuff like that, like I love those concepts, and I just try to backtrack it. Like I try to look at it like where does that stem from? Like where does that come from? You know, and it always comes from the self. So like it's like why is that? You know, that's how I always think about things. I'm not saying there's an answer in this moment, but that's just how my mind works when I hear that kind of stuff. It's like how can I backtrack this to like just is it a is it like a you know like a lack of maturity? Is it like a needing instant gratification thing? Is it like just all these different things? Like these, not like these things have anything to do with what we're talking about, but it's just like I try to make sense of things and try to see how these things that I feel like we work on can manifest in so many places outside that we don't even think about, you know? And like sometimes I feel like that's a lot of like what Jordan Peterson does, which is really good for me. Is there's a lot of things that I've learned on this journey that I just can't put words to. It's just what I do. I don't know. It's just like, and I just learn that's me, and it helps, and I continue doing it. You know, it's that simple. I realize it helps, and I keep going. You know, like I said, I'm not like some deep intellectual person that like can figure out while it's happening. Like this is why. I just know it. I just know it helps, and I continue on. Then of course I make my assumptions as things go, and I see that like progression is still happening. But then I read stuff, and I listen to stuff like stuff of his. Right, I read his stuff. I'm saying, and like he puts words and he puts thoughts and he puts reasoning to these things that I've learned, and then it sparks thought that's just just to say they help me grow is an understatement. Like when he puts it that way, and I can really relate it to my life, because that's the thing. It's like a lot of these things that I feel like I learn from him. It's not stuff that I learn. Not saying like I have everything figured out, but it's not a matter of stuff. It's like, oh, I want to try that. You know, it's not like that. To me, it's more like, all right, I'm learning this stuff about myself, and I like the way it makes me feel, and I'm gonna continue doing it. But then it's just like, oh, this is why it helps me. Okay, this makes sense, and that's why that bothered me. That's why I struggled this. Huh. Okay. Well, what am I doing now that's still reflecting that? Okay, well, maybe if I, huh. You know what I mean? Like, it just makes me think of the things I'm already doing, things that I have done. It's not like a matter of like trying new things out in the future, you know? And that's what I love about his stuff. It's like practical. Granted, practical for me versus someone else. Like, maybe, I don't know. I can't speak for someone else, but like, he puts words and puts ideas to things that I would have never been able to do on my own. And like a lot of times I even feel fraudulent when I'm talking because I'm not sure how much of it is my own manifestation, you know, like things that I've learned and like on my own, or if it's just like things that I've learned through his like concepts. I can't tell how much of that is just like kind of regurgitated out of me, or if it's stuff that I've really figured out on my own. And I guess it's like a good place because it's not like I'm sitting here trying to be a fraud and like, you know what I mean? Like just put it out there and like not practice it myself. But like a lot of the things he talks about and he teaches and all these things, just like they're practical for me in my life. Like so, I can't even put it to words how practical it is. So, not like anyone listening. It's not like they're gonna listen to that and they're like, oh, I'm gonna go and listen to him. Lucas said it helps. Lucas said it changed his life. I'm bought in. It's like, all right. But like, he's one of these guys. Like, if I actually got the chance to meet him, for example, I don't even know what I would say to him
I,
because there's really not much I can put. Like, it's priceless what he's done. Like, he's not like I can't even tell him. I couldn't even tell him what he's helped me with.
Well,
Granted,
why
it's like,
not
yeah, put
just
my
have a
life in order.
conversation? Like, how cool it is to be just sit down and have conversations with him.
Absolutely, but
You
that's
know,
yeah,
like a three like a one on one or like a this.
yeah.
I think
I
that would
mean,
be
well,
I think that would be neat.
that's of course incredible, but at the same time, these shows like yeah, you get separate tickets. You pay a little extra money because you'll have meet and greets afterwards,
Uh,
and you pay extra, and you get 15 seconds with him.
oh, I'm okay with that.
So
That's
like
not.
I'm not even paying. I didn't even think about it. Like at that point, it's just like not to talk bad about him, but at that point, it's almost like
I don't think that's
you're
him.
putting. It's almost like it's a you're putting him as like some god. Like 15 seconds of time is worthy of like worthy of $100. It's like I don't know. I couldn't get behind that. Like
I don't
so,
think that's him.
my point. It's like shake his hand for 15 seconds, tell him what. It's like no. I mean, but I mean, dude, I feel like we can. I don't. We're at 58 minutes, and I feel like we need to start talking.
Yeah, I say we just pause here. Thank you all for coming. Again, join us next week. We'll probably continue to dive into these topics just as we have been. And we appreciate you guys continuing to support us, continuing to listen to us. Um, Again, if there's any questions, any comments, please feel free to share. We haven't heard from many, but we would like to hear from more of you. So please do that to help us and share with those who need, or just if it helps you, maybe it'll help your friends. So thank you for your time, and we'll see you next week.